began this tradition to provide an opportunity to update the community, our citizens and friends, with the great things happening here in the great American small town of Holly. Before we get into everything, I want to welcome and recognize a number of individuals who are here with us tonight, including Rose Township Supervisor Paul Gamka, Bill Bullard, former county clerk, former state representative, and many other offices with a distinguished career in public service. Former Holly Area School Superintendent Kent Barnes and current Assistant Superintendent Scott Rober. The members of the American Legion and VFW Post, including VFW Post Commander Sam Alvarado, and Holly Area Chamber of Commerce Director Andrea Silvas. And if I did happen to miss anyone else who would be considered a VIP, which is pretty much everyone else in this room, I want to thank you all for coming. I also want to take this opportunity to recognize the village's partner in waste management, Republic Waste and Gary Hicks, who have not only been a fantastic friend to the village and our residents, but have also sponsored the refreshments for tonight's event, courtesy of Cupcakes and Kisses in downtown Holly. Thank you, Gary, and let's have a round of applause. For the past several years, I've taken time in this address to highlight the accomplishments of our village from the previous year. Tonight, I'm going to change the format a little bit and talk about where we started, where we are, how we got to where we are, and where we're going. It all started in 2008. We'll hop in the Wayback Machine. Back at the beginning of the economic recession that hit our community and many other communities throughout the state very hard. At that time, two candidates for Township Trustee, Mr. Jesse Lambert and Ms. Janet Leslie, won election on a platform that we can do better as a community. Several years later, Village Councilor Jason Hughes asked if Holly wanted 2 years or more of what we've had for the previous 14 years, leading to his election as village president. Their message was clear, moreover true, that even in trying economic times, we can have a vision for our community's future and move towards it, even if step by step, and not just some undefined ideal or longing for times past. That the battle lines between the village and the township and the shores that made the village an island from our neighbors were not productive. That we needed to engage, model, learn from, and work with our successful partners around us in Oakland County and throughout Michigan. And that the old order and entrenched leadership wasn't working in a modern and progressive world that needed new and innovative solutions. This message resonated throughout our community and probably struck a little fear in some corners, where there was comfort in the way things were, how we did things. Little by little, new strong leaders emerged and began to leave their mark on the community. Now, if you asked somebody back in 2008 what Holly would look like today, 8 years later, in 2016, I doubt they'd tell you some of these things. That our historic downtown commercial district has been at 100% occupancy, with some businesses having a waiting list for properties to have a waiting list to come in to be available. That our property values have risen at a pace where we've had to twice roll back our property tax rate. That our Midtown section, our Lake District, is the subject of a comprehensive redevelopment and beautification project called for by our very own residents. That we once again have a professionally managed community center that is on pace to have more than 20,000 users pass through the doors this year alone for everything from recreational activities, community education, government agencies, and veteran services. And that the village has gone from cutting already bare-bones budgets and fear of receivership to restoring services and building healthy fund balances due to long-range financial planning. That after more than 20 years of wanting, we have finally increased safety on the busiest corridor in our community with completion of the Grange Hall Road sidewalk project. And finally, that we're in the earliest stages of working with Holly Township to work out a plan to provide municipal services to the growing periphery of Holly. There used to be a saying that Holly was interested in managed growth. Well, that's the definition of managed growth, when our community grows and we figure out how to provide the services we need. All of these things, and if I listed all the things that we've done in the last 5 years in the village and in the community, we'd be here until the Lions win the Super Bowl. All of these things are the product of strong, visionary leadership, especially from our village administration, who have a combined total of more than 250 years of successful experience in public affairs, most of those in village manager Jerry Walker, and who have guided our government steadily and with wisdom and determination to where we are today. I'll talk talk more about our leaders and their departments in a moment, but I want to recognize our leadership team, led by Village Manager Jerry Walker, Clerk Treasurer Kathy Behrens. I thought I saw her walk in there, right there. Director of Public Works Brian Clausen, in the back. Wastewater Treatment Plant Superintendent Tim Stalkop, who I believe was not able to attend tonight. Chief of Police Michael Story. Fire Chief Steve McGee. Downtown Development Authority Director Andy Potter. And our new Carl Richter Community Center Director and Holly Township Parks and Recs Director Tony Brinker. I'm not sure if Tony's here or somewhere else. I want to thank all of our department heads who I just recognized, as well as the teams that work under you, our village staff, our public workers, for the service that you put in, and the efforts that have brought us to where we are tonight. If we can give them a round of applause for this. He's not here, so this is going to be a little bit awkward, but I also need to offer special recognition to Tim Stalkop. Tim's been here for a long time in the village, leading our wastewater treatment plant for decades, and stewarding one of the finest small town facilities everywhere. And he's done this in the face of declining revenues, increased costs, unfunded government mandates from Lansing and Washington. In last year's address, I neglected to make mention of the work of Tim and his team, nor did I make any jokes. Plus, my wife worked with Tim's wife, so my mistake really hit him. The reality is that of all the jobs in the village, Tim's is the one that we most easily take for granted. Once we flush, it's out of sight and out of mind. But thanks to Tim, we are protecting our natural resources and our groundwater while providing the most basic of modern conveniences and civilization. Something we've learned recently from our neighbors in Flint never to take for granted. And so, if he was here, I'd say, Tim, the crap's on me, and I want to personally thank you for your work and your service to the village over many years, and hopefully we'll applaud for him loud enough that he'll hear us wherever we are. Our administrative team and our elected and appointed officials on our boards and commissions have adopted a number of values, whether purposefully or unintentionally, as we have addressed emerging issues and begun initiatives of progress. These values include the use of best practices in management, operations, and decision-making. We do our research, we consult trusted experts, seek comparable models, and we deliberate carefully. The willingness to cooperate, to share services, and to partner with innovation. The Village of Holly cannot find success being its own island and in a system of autarky where we think we can always manage ourselves. We need to look outside to successes and models that work and that we can mutually benefit from. And we focus on practicality and outcome instead of blind principle and ideology. We focus on pragmatic effect with the mantra being that the good of the many outweighs the good of the few. And with that, I want to share some of the products of leadership using those values that the village can see around us everywhere as we talk about what we've done and where we are. Last July was a pretty significant time for Holly. I had thought that at that time the greatest accomplishment we've had was overcoming 20 or more years of bureaucracy to get a sidewalk connecting Patterson Elementary, Holly Woodlands, and our western neighborhoods to North Holly Road, making one of the last remaining areas of the village safe and walkable for children, families, and senior citizens. But just a few weeks, see that's canned, I own candy now. But just a few weeks after we cut the sidewalk ribbon and shared some popsicles with community leaders and kids at Patterson, an even bigger accomplishment began, one with roots in Mr. Lambert and Ms. Leslie and the Economic Development Task Force. We started the birth of a true community vision through the Main Street Design Charrette project, Imagine Midtown. For more than 8 years leading up to that point, community leaders have rightly held the belief that a community vision is necessary for economic growth and development. How do you invite investors and entrepreneurs to come to your town if you can't tell them what it is that you want? Who would take the risk of investing their time and money and effort and not know if they were going to be a good fit for prosperity? After years of spinning our wheels, we finally made progress when we focused on our 3 principles: best practices, partnerships, and practicality. Teaming up with Main Street Oakland County, who used their demonstrated experience to collect the input of the community on what development in our Lake District should look like. More than 2,400 door hangers were hand-delivered to every household in the village, And I know because I did about 600 of them, and I want to say that Mr. Potter, our DDA director, probably did twice as many as I did, and those were hot days walking around in July. But every week we spread the word as we could through door hangers, through social media, through traditional media, everything we could, not only in the village but also in our adjacent neighborhoods, right on the borders of the village, in the Riverside subdivisions, because they use the village and are a part of the community just as we are. The result of this was that hundreds of area citizens participated, whether they're coming to the 3-day design process or participating in surveys online. The product of the effort is a set of recommendations that has been presented to every board and commission in the village, published in full for the community to read, review, and provide further input on. The village will have a public hearing at next week's council meeting on Tuesday, February 23rd, for another opportunity for community engagement before the council begins formal consideration of the plan's recommendations in the coming months. In addition to Imagine Midtown, the DDA has also accomplished a great deal of other steps of progress under the leadership of Chairperson Dick Rozelle, Director Andy Potter, and Village Manager Jerry Walker. Our Ladies' Night Out event has been one of the most successful promotional activities we've done for years, and over the past several years we've been successful in making it a revenue-neutral event. We spent as little of the DDA's tax capture funds as possible on it, basically having our businesses saying the bigger or the more our businesses participate, the more return we can get from it. Just this past summer, we also erected directory kiosks in the historic downtown in 3 locations. This was another one of those 20-year projects, and you're going to hear me mention 20-year projects a couple times, and you're probably going to hear me say it a couple more in the next coming months. Because, as I've said in council meetings, committee meetings, DDA meetings, and talk to people around town, one of the recurring themes that I hear from everybody is, we talked about that 20 years ago. We talked about that back in the 70s. Well, let's do it. And this is one of the projects that we did, is that to get simple directories that when our shoppers come downtown, they can see our businesses and find where they're going and other points around our historic community. This is just another best practice that successful downtowns do. We've taken an active role in supporting downtown business development. And there's one story that I want to share without getting into a lot of details, but as everybody's been patiently waiting, for the Davisburg Bread Company has been working on renovations and waiting to open in the building next to the old village offices, right at the red line railroad tracks and our public parking. Well, one of the hurdles they ran into was regulatory issues and environmental concerns with the property. Now, a lot of usually a hurdle like this, dealing with our regulators and our bureaucrats in Lansing, can sometimes be insurmountable, and it can make the difference between a business opening and closing. Well, Doug Scoville, the owner, approached our DDA and said, is there anything you can do to help me out? And Mr. Rozelle, and Mr. Walker, and Mr. Potter said, well, we'll see what we can do. Now, what they did was a little bit out of the ordinary. What they did is they started making phone calls. They started making phone calls to Lansing, to the DEQ. They started looking at the paperwork, and they took an advocacy role for a burgeoning business that was coming to Holly. And what they ended up doing was getting everything free and clear for Mr. Scoville to continue progress in developing his business. What's significant about this is that this is from the Downtown Development Authority that usually focuses on things like promoting downtown districts, marketing, flowers and trees, and other things like that. But our DDA director, our team, and our chairperson, and really by extension our whole board, rallied behind and helped the business open. And it's been told to me that from our friends in Oakland County and elsewhere around Michigan that nobody's ever heard of DDA doing this. So I want to give a special round of applause to Dick, who wasn't able to make it tonight, but to Andy, Jerry, and our DDA board for taking a significant step like that. A lot of these things, while we're talking about the DDA board, a lot of these things would not have been possible just a mere 2 years ago, when the DDA was barely able to be accredited and was often distracted from what the legal and core purpose of a DDA is, which probably anybody who's heard me speak about the DDA has heard me say it a million times and is bored of it. But DDAs were created almost 40 years ago for the purpose of protecting property values in downtowns from the flight off to malls and other shopping areas through economic development and historic preservation. For a long time, our board wasn't completely clear on those values, and while they were dedicated and did a good job, we didn't necessarily get the mileage we needed to. Well, in the past couple of years, we started changing that. And we've seen considerable growth and focus in our board, who have been what I believe is one of the most productive boards that I've seen in my entire time of service to the Village of Holly. And the numbers themselves of what we've done economically in town show that our business community is strong, and Holly is the place for investment. In 2015 alone, private sector investment neared $1.7 million here in the village, investing in more than 18,000 square feet of new or renovated business space. Over the last 5 years, that total rises to an amazing $4 million. In fact, it exceeds it because about that time we weren't really keeping good numbers on how much people were investing in businesses. And there's millions of dollars more to invest, but if we can do it in the past couple of years, we certainly have a great story to tell investors now to renovate some of our older properties or look for adaptive reuses. Another effect of this has been jobs, and jobs is something that I've been mentioning for years. We need people to work here, and we have support from Oakland County and their emerging sectors program to create modern jobs that fit in small towns. In the past couple of years, or in the past year, we've established 50 full or part-time jobs here in the village. Our DDA is truly transformed into our economic engine here in Holly. And in fact, not only has Holly's Main Street program become one of Oakland County's model programs, we're at the point where Main Street Holly is in the running for the Great American Main Street Award, the highest award presented nationwide to Main Street programs. So at this time, I want to thank and recognize our entire DDA board, including Chairperson Dick Rizal, Vice Chairperson Lisa Clark, who is here, County Commissioner Bob Hoffman, who I think I saw sneak in, he's way in the back there, Jim Beasley, owner of Spot Shooter Archery, Janet Seeley, a resident of the Village of Holly, Pam Krantz, and Kirk Heath for their service and wisdom and commitment. I firmly believe that the strength of a community depends on the strength of its public schools. And in 2013, when Holly area schools decided to reopen the Sherman campus, an ideal opportunity emerged for Holly area schools and the village to support each other in a practical partnership built on best practices. The partnership between Holly area schools and the Village of Holly to move into the Carl Richter campus reduced our main office operating costs by nearly 80% and permitted redevelopment of another large historic downtown building, putting it back on the tax rolls, all while providing greater opportunities for community services and engagement through the Carl Richter Community Center. In 2014, the KRCC hired its first director, Nick Klemp, who I see standing in the back. And he was hired due to the fact that the demand for a professional, dedicated manager in the center occurred almost a year ahead of our projections. Unfortunately for the community center and for the village, Mr. Klemp had the opportunity to take a greater leadership role with the Holly Area Community Coalition. So even though his tenure was brief, I want to take this opportunity to thank him for nurturing the seeds of the community center and thank him for his continued service in the many, many areas of Holly where Mr. Klemp volunteers, contributes his time and passion, and improves us one by one. So Mr. Klemp, thank you. However, the reality is that when things are rolling, opportunities beget opportunities. And last month, the Village Council approved yet another shared services agreement with Holly Township Parks and Recreation for Holly Township Parks and Recreation Director, Tony Brinker, to lead the next phase of growth in the community center. Ms. Brinker has nearly 30 years of extensive recreation and community education program management experience and represents a fantastic synergy between the village and the Township Parks Department. I also want to thank the Carl Richter Community Center Advisory Board, who is the voice of the community and the driver of demand in the services of the community center, which includes Chairperson Joe Mishler, Terry Connell, Marlo Davidson, Nick Klemp, Sarah McCanney, and I know a lot of people come in and out as well, so if I didn't miss anybody on that list, I apologize, but let's give the advisory board thanks for their The men and women who serve our community and our public safety agencies also need a great deal of recognition. These are often dangerous jobs where lives hang in the balance, sometimes that of our own police officers or firefighters. We are fortunate to live in a safe community, in no small part due to our officers and responders and firefighters and their leaders, Chief of Police Michael Story and Fire Chief Steve McGee. This year, Holly wished happy retirement to Police Officer Greg Raymond, who faithfully served the community for 25 distinguished years and now intends to spend the next 25 years fishing. So let's have a round of applause for Officer Raymond. We also bid farewell to Sergeant Julie Bemis and Officer Jose Garcia, who had each served Holly for nearly 10 years before moving on to Fenton and the Oakland County Sheriff's Department, respectively. But even as old friends leave, new friends arrive, and we're pleased to welcome Officers Steve Ligan and Oleg Cannell to our department. I also would like everyone here to take a brief moment of reflection and offer our thoughts and prayers to Holly firefighter Andy Green and his family as he continues his fight with cancer. Holly's fire department has been outstanding in service as well as cost effectiveness under Fire Chief Steve McGee through another practical partnership with best practices with Groveland Township. This has increased our quality of service and while saving hundreds of thousands of dollars through the life of the agreement so far. However, we could talk about fire hoses, badges, police cars, and many of the other numerical things, but something occurred this last summer that gave me pause to really show how great our public safety officials are, and specifically our fire department. Last August, a fire broke out at Holly Woodlands, our senior community center. There was some kind of short in the preparation kitchen, filled the room with smoke, and our fire team handled the fire danger itself with the skill and professionalism we all expect. But what was shared with me most in speaking with the director, Deanna Coggins, with some of the residents that I talked to that were there, was the demeanor and care of the team that showed to the senior residents at Holly Woodlands. And this isn't just our fire department, but also our partners at the North Oakland County Fire Authority, who also came with mutual aid. Our firefighters, not only did they make sure that the building was safe and do their job, but they helped the senior citizens and the residents there out of the building, providing warm coats or warm vehicles on a cool night, and even helping them gather personal effects and medications to take with them where they were going while their living spaces were restored to healthy and safe conditions. Their jobs are to put out fires and to keep people safe, but their bigger jobs are to care for people, and there's no other way. I can't count the number of positive comments I received on their professionalism and their care. So let's take a moment to thank Chief Story and McGee and all of the men and women who keep our community safe. In past years, a lot of focus has been on the financial status of the village of Holly. If our public schools are the strength of our community, then the strength of the local government is in its financial management. I'm proud to say that under the leadership of Clerk Treasurer Kathy Behrens, the village has never been in better financial condition. And I'm excited to report that for the fourth straight year, the village of Holly is operating under a fully balanced budget, and that our 2016-2017 budget is also anticipated to be balanced as well. As reported by our auditing partners at Plant & Moran, the village's unrestricted fund balances, our discretionary rainy day savings and surpluses, are not only at, but exceed recommended healthy levels for the first time in more than 6 years. This provides Holly the confidence that we can address emergent expenses or crises and begin planning for the restoration or expansion of municipal services in a financially responsible and conservative way. For the past 3 years, we've also been working with our partners at Benzinski & Associates to reissue our water, sewer, and general obligation bonds, saving village taxpayers and water sewer customers hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest over the life of the bonds. Combined with the anticipated redevelopment of the Riverside North subdivision, increased legal pressure to compel Buzz Silverman to satisfy his judgment in debt to the village of Holly, the new master meter that has been installed at Sun Communities, which will allow the village to recoup $28,000 in unpaid water charges and greatly reduce system loss that everybody else would pay for. Relief for our water and sewer customers is continuing to progress. Additionally, Standard & Poor's has upgraded the village bond ratings from A stable to A+, representing lowered borrowing costs and greater confidence in our financial management, and Plant & Moran has issued the village, once again, an outstanding, unqualified audit report. So Ms. Behrens, to you and your entire team in our finance department, thank you very much. department where we seldom think about the services they provide, filling potholes, repairing water mains, grooming our parks, helping with public events, and plowing roads until they aren't done. But these are the jobs that never end, and our public works team put in long hours with hard work to keep our community running and our streets safe. Obviously, with the water crisis in Flint garnering international headlines and support, it's understandable that our residents have questions and concerns about the quality and safety of our water. I'm happy to report that our water system is on a regular testing schedule and consistently meets or exceeds safety level requirements for lead and other heavy metals, and we follow the strictest safety protocols. Our testing procedures and results are published on the Village of Holly website for public consumption. Additionally, the Village of Holly has an often unnoticed resource working to keep our groundwater resources safe on a community and grassroots level through the Wellhead Protection Team, consisting of Director Brian Clausen, Public Works employees Tom Kernan and Jerry Llewellyn, Holly Township Trustee Mark Cornwell, Holly Area Schools teachers Josh McCready and Dan Hughes, Sue Julian of Headwaters Trails, Paul Gamka, Dave Gordon of Rose Township, and led by Kelly Hahn of the Michigan Rural Water Association. This team operates grants to help promote the awareness of keeping our groundwater safe. They communicate with our area students, and they put out public service campaigns. So we want to thank them for the time that they put in every month to make sure that the community is well informed and has the resources to help protect our most valuable resources. I could go on and on, but I don't know if we all want to be here all night. With that said, we've accomplished a lot in the past 5 years as a community, as an administration. It may be easy to think that our bases are covered. We're moving forward, and we're in a good place. In fact, we have many challenges that we have to face as a community and as a government, and we need to not continue to kick the can down the road. Despite our financial progress and careful management, the Village of Holly still has more than $12 million in unfunded liabilities for current and legacy benefit costs. This is the final piece of our fiscal puzzle. And as I've said time and time again, the tough decisions aren't the ones that you're forced to make. They're the ones that you don't have to make, but you do because it's the right thing to do. In the coming years, the Village Council will need to consider how to balance reconciling those liabilities within a budget that still fosters growth and provides needed services. While our business community is enjoying a great deal of success, we also need to begin to spread our attention to our neighborhoods. Blight is a continued problem throughout the community, whether it's an old factory on Saginaw or a dilapidated house on Maple Street. While our village administration have worked to be exceptionally cooperative to encourage adequate maintenance of properties, the deterioration of properties is a drain on village resources and on the wealth of our residents through declining property values. This is another area the Village Council and administration must focus on, whether it be even if it means going to the point of more stringent requirements for rental licensing or stricter ordinance and enforcement for property maintenance. Likewise, some of the streets in our community can make you think you're in a third world country instead of one of the most affluent counties in the United States. Coggeshall Street, Partner Street, Sherman Street, and many others. Raise your hand if you have one in mind that I didn't already mention. The condition of these streets costs our residents hundreds of dollars in car repairs and undue wear and tear. Unfortunately, the price tag to repair these streets, just the most critical ones, is in excess of $15 million, or several million dollars just for resurfacing. Obviously, priorities in budgeting must be set to address this football that has been passed on for more than 10 years. In 2013, the Village Council made the difficult decision, but the correct decision, to contract with the Oakland County Sheriff's Department to provide our dispatch services. A decision that has seen our costs decrease by nearly 75% while maintaining the same or better quality of service. Yet another example of a practical partnership built on best practices. But with so many other priorities and community needs, the Village Council will also need to find a solution to the budget imbalance with our police department. Holly is blessed to have talented, dedicated officers keeping us safe and secure. Nevertheless, our police department is funded on nearly the entire property tax assessment within the village and almost 70% of our general fund budget. This is almost 40% higher than many other Michigan communities that have a similar area population, demographic, and budget to Holly. Having our own police department is an important part of our community's identity. It is my belief that we should never be in a position where we don't have our police officers wearing our uniforms and having our patches on their shoulders. Nonetheless, we need to figure out a way to ensure that our police officers have the training and equipment they need, compensation and benefits that are attractive and competitive, and maintain appropriate staffing levels to keep our community safe while still being fiscally responsible and right-sized for our community. And finally, the greatest challenge for the Village Council will face in the coming years is keeping the momentum that we have built going and continuing to focus on being practical, seeking out beneficial partnerships, and instituting best practices, even in the face of pushback and cultural resistance. Being an election year, the voters of Holly must choose, like they have in recent election, a core of leaders who are progressive and focused on the vision of prosperity for our great small town. In fact, that's the one and only thing that has brought us to where we are today and will propel us to where we are going. The village is strong, financially stable, with an ever-increasing quality of life, and we are the model of small town management. It's been an honor serving as village president over the past 3 years, and especially during our sesquicentennial celebration that we had this past September. And there are so many people, whether it's organizations, Suzanne Heichel, Joe Mishler, the Moose Lodge, the VFW, the American Legion, the Masonic Lodge, volunteers. I think I saw Randy Adam, and I know he was busy. And if I tried to name everybody, we'd be here until the Lions won a second Super Bowl. So I just want to give everybody who contributed to the sesquicentennial and a fantastic, fun weekend a great big round of applause right now. I would like to thank everybody for coming tonight, and I look forward to celebrating our community's progress far into the future. Thank you for all you do, for being a part of this community, and have a great night. Yes, actually there's some that didn't make it, and thank you, Mr. Alvarado. We also confirmed throughout the course of this year that the Village of Holly is a Purple Heart Village, recognizing our servicemen and women who were wounded and sometimes made the ultimate sacrifice in combat, recognizing them with a monument downtown and continued recognition. So we want to thank the VFW, the American Legion, all our veterans, and everybody that helped bring that recognition to our community as well. Please enjoy the refreshments that we have, courtesy of Republic Waste, Cupcakes and Kisses, and thank you all for coming.